Tonight, labor turmoil during tax season as workers at the Canada Revenue Agency vote in favor of a strike. The threat of a damaging shutdown.
The tax system is central to the heartbeat of the country.
In the countdown to the May 1st filing deadline. Chipping away at the ice storm recovery.
I'm asking people to be patient.
Feeling powerless in 2 provinces.
We're surviving, but we would rather be at home.
Plus, long-distance love unleashed.
He doesn't have other dog friends in Calgary like Sadie.
An unbreakable bond turned online sensation.
CTV National News with Omar Sachedina. Reporting tonight, John Venevali Rao.
Good evening. There are concerns tonight about potential delays and disruptions when it comes to filing your federal taxes or getting a return. This after thousands of unionized government tax workers voted overwhelmingly to strike. With more on their demands and how you could be affected, here's CTV's Annie Bergeron-Oliver.
In 1 week's time, this could be a picket line. And if employees at the Canada Revenue Agency do strike, the tax process would come to a halt.
The tax system is central to the heartbeat of the country. Just about everybody will suffer. Recipients of tax, payers of tax, and those who are involved in tax disputes.
The Union of Taxation Employees, representing more than 35,000 CRA employees, voted overwhelmingly to strike just weeks before the May 1st tax deadline. If it happens, some staff will remain on the job to ensure essential programs like the Canada Child Benefit are delivered, while processing and call centres will essentially shut down, meaning most tax refunds and payments won't go out.
We collaborated to great extent over the pandemic without a contract. And we took the high road and we came to, I think, the rescue of the government to help out the population who really needed it and to keep them afloat and the businesses. And in return, we got no more respect.
The union wants better pay and flexibility around remote work. Contentious issues also pushing 120,000 Treasury Board employees towards a strike. The head of the Public Service Alliance of Canada, which bargains for both unions, says 155,000 people could be in a position to strike next week.
Yeah, historic. It's never happened before in Canada, so it'll certainly be the largest strike that's ever been held.
The looming threat puts immense pressure on the federal government, who just last month pledged to cut $15 billion from the public service.
Something like a CRA, that's an agency that people interact with. And so people will really experience it if these strikes happen, which could put extra pressure on the government.
Mediated talks begin April 17th. When asked today, CRA wouldn't say whether it would push the May 1st tax deadline or remove any penalties for filing late. John.
All right, Annie Bergeron-Oliver in Ottawa tonight, where thousands are slowly seeing their lights getting switched back on after an ice storm earlier this week blanketed parts of Ontario and Quebec. In that province, hundreds of thousands are still waiting for power to be restored. And as CTV's Heather Wright tells us, it could be a while.
A massive cleanup effort underway in Quebec as the lights in the province slowly come back on. Still hundreds of thousands remain in the dark, and it could be several more days until power is restored.
The target right now is that tonight we should have 80% of the people back with electricity, and tomorrow night 95%.
More than 1.1 million customers lost power following Wednesday's ice storm, which coated large swaths of Quebec and eastern Ontario in ice and has claimed at least 3 lives, including a man in his 70s who was found unconscious in his garage. He had been using a diesel-powered generator. More than 80 people have been treated for carbon monoxide poisoning, prompting Montreal Public Health to issue a warning, reminding people not to use gas-powered appliances indoors.
I've never seen personally a number as high as that of intoxications of carbon monoxide. So for the city of Montreal, it's a big number.
Quebec has dispatched roughly 1,400 hydro workers to clear debris and restore power. Until then, public buildings have been transformed into warming centers.
I'm stressed a little bit with the food. It's the worst thing to lose all the food.
In the nation's capital, Hydro Ottawa has set a goal to get power restored to all customers by Saturday evening. But the cleanup is expected to take weeks.
City trees and personal trees. We got trees on buildings, on hydro line.
And another threat is looming as residents along the Rideau River brace for flooding.
Already worried about the sump pump and losing power, and it's gone up pretty fast since last night.
Crews in Eastern Ontario and Quebec are working around the clock to restore power, but many are going to bed for a third straight night with no heat. John.
And it's going down to -11 tonight in Ottawa. Thank you so much, Heather. Well, nasty weather led to some terrifying moments at a golf tournament in Georgia when powerful winds brought down several trees. Play at the Masters came to a halt when 3 giant pines came crashing down, nearly crushing spectators. No one was injured. The stormy weather is expected to continue throughout the weekend, but play is scheduled to resume tomorrow. Tensions remain high in the Middle East, where Israelis and Palestinians continue to trade blows in a worsening series of tit-for-tat violence. 1 person was killed and 5 others were injured in Tel Aviv tonight when a car rammed into a group of tourists. The driver shot dead by Israeli police. It follows a day marred by rocket attacks, airstrikes, and in the occupied West Bank, the killings of 2 Jewish women. With more, here's CTV's chief international correspondent, Paul Workman.
2 British sisters, one a teenager, the other in her 20s, were killed in the West Bank attack. Ambushed and shot inside their car near a Jewish settlement where they lived. A 3rd woman, their mother, was seriously wounded and medevac to hospital. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu went to the scene of the shooting after days of rising tension amid the risk of a larger war breaking out. Our forces are in pursuit of these terrorists, he said. We will hold them accountable as we have with all murderers over the last months. There was praise for the attack in the Gaza Strip during a day of angry protest marches and after a night of Israeli air raids, all linked by clashes earlier this week around the Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem. A Hamas spokesman calling the killing of the 2 women a heroic operation. Israeli warplanes bombed targets overnight, both in Gaza and southern Lebanon, in response to a volley of rockets fired toward Israel. Israel said it was aiming at tunnels and weapons workshops. One of their missiles hit a taxi. If I was in the car, I would have died, said the owner. There is nothing here but homes and farmland. In Jerusalem, the day was mostly peaceful as more than 100,000 Muslims poured into the Al-Aqsa compound. An Israeli police raid there earlier in the week led to anger across the Arab world and ultimately to the exchange of rockets and missiles overnight. Since the beginning of the year, there's been a surge of attacks between Israelis and Palestinians, reaching a critical mass, it seems, as Easter, Ramadan, and Passover all happen at the same time, John.
All right, Paul, thank you. And on this Good Friday, Pope Francis presided over a prayer service at St. Peter's Basilica. The 86-year-old pontiff, who was recently hospitalized for bronchitis, was there for 2 hours, but because of cold weather, was a no-show in Rome at tonight's traditional Way of the Cross procession. Instead, he watched it from his home in the Vatican. It's the first time he has missed that procession since becoming the head of the Catholic Church. The U.S. Defense Department is investigating the apparent online leak of top-secret military documents allegedly revealing details of Ukraine's preparations for an upcoming offensive against Russia. Screenshots of classified U.S. and NATO documents have been circulating on social media showing troop numbers and casualty estimates, but Pentagon officials won't confirm whether they are legitimate. An advisor to Ukraine's president is accusing Russia of being behind the leak and claims the documents have nothing to do with Ukraine's real plans. And a Moscow-based journalist for the Wall Street Journal, arrested last week on suspicion of spying, has been formally charged with espionage. Russia is claiming Evan Gershkovich tried to obtain classified information about a military factory, a charge he categorically denies. If convicted, he faces up to 20 years in prison. He's currently being held behind bars in eastern Moscow and will appear in court again in May. There is more outrage tonight over that vote in Tennessee to kick out 2 black Democratic state officials from the legislature. It happened following a protest about gun violence in America and has sparked accusations of unequal treatment and racism. Here's CTV's Washington bureau chief, Joy Malbon.
They call themselves the Tennessee Three, standing up for change, advocating for gun control, and today, getting a boost from the White House.
We need leaders who have the courage to act at state houses and in Washington, D.C. in the United States Congress.
The vice president throwing her support behind 2 black Democratic lawmakers, Justin Jones and Justin Pearson, who were kicked out of office.
It was a public and political lynching. It was an attempt to humiliate us, but what they did was really show for the world and humiliate themselves that this is not a democracy.
The Republican majority voted to expel them both, an extraordinary punishment for disrupting House business, but spared Gloria Johnson.
I think it's pretty clear I'm a 60-year-old white woman, and they are 2 young black men.
Last week, all 3 took to the House floor to protest gun violence.
No action! No peace!
Frustrated at inaction after yet another deadly school shooting that killed 6, including 3 children in Nashville.
Our members literally didn't look at the ethnicity of the members that were up for expulsion.
Republicans denied race had any role. From the Tennessee Black Caucus,
the optics, the world saw the optics.
Even the son of Martin Luther King Jr. weighed in.
Just goes to show how sad and tragic and divided and how awful racism is. We are better than that.
This new generation of lawmakers say they won't be silenced, and they might not be out of a job for very long. City Council will hold a vote to reinstate them temporarily until a special election.
Tonight, President Joe Biden spoke with all 3, thanking them for their leadership in pushing for stronger gun laws and inviting the Tennessee Three to the White House. John?
Okay, thank you, Joy. And the White House tonight is filing an appeal after a federal judge in Texas suspended the FDA's longtime approval of an abortion pill. The controversial decision follows a lawsuit by anti-abortion advocates that challenged the FDA's process to approve mifepristone over safety concerns. The drug is used, along with another, to terminate pregnancies at up to 10 weeks, and the suspension could affect access across the United States. The Nova Scotia College of Physicians and Surgeons has suspended a doctor's license for allegedly writing thousands of prescriptions for the diabetes and weight loss drug Ozempic. Dr. David Davison is now living in the U.S. He is under investigation for allegedly giving those prescriptions to Americans. They were then filled by pharmacies in Vancouver. Last month, BC announced it would restrict access to Ozempic for non-Canadians following a surge in demand. And Canada's food banks are also facing a demand surge as record-high grocery prices put the squeeze on wallets and leave millions of Canadians struggling to feed themselves. As families gather for holiday meals this weekend, some tables may be a little more bare than usual. And as CTV's Hafsa Arif reports, food insecurity is forcing people to find alternatives.
The lineup outside this grocery store is growing as families pick up last-minute items on their shopping list for the Easter long weekend.
My church does an Easter brunch, so I'm picking up some ingredients for some of the food I'm making for our church for Sunday.
Andrea McKay drove an hour to get her groceries here. A drive, she says, is well worth it.
Gateway's prices they're incomparable. You can't find anything around the province that's similar, honestly.
$4.97, that's $16.
Many here say they're avoiding the bigger retail chains as the cost to buy groceries continues to climb.
But chicken and pork here are always a good price. And they can always do better than the superstores.
According to a new report, Taking a trip to the grocery store won't be getting any easier on the wallet. Experts say price hikes will be seen in vegetables, dairy, and meat. These prices are set to climb another 8% this year, which will cost an average family of four over $16,000 on food in total.
And it's $160, sweetheart.
With costs soaring, many are going to food banks for support. Feed Nova Scotia says it's already feeling the extra pressure of food insecurity.
The number of people accessing support through food banks across the province is up 23% over the same time last year, with the number of visits up over 27%.
While some will be setting their tables for an Easter dinner with all of its fixings, Feed Nova Scotia says many will not get that chance.
It is just about day-to-day survival. And so, people can't even focus on the significance of a long weekend or a special meal together because they are simply trying to survive day to day.
According to Feed Nova Scotia, 1 in 6 households in the province is living with food insecurity every single day. During this time, charitable organizations are doing what they can to support families. Hafsa Arif, CTV News, Halifax.
Well, time for a short break, but when we come back,
we were 6, 7 years old.
Disturbing allegations of abusive dental work dating back decades. Community members in Winnipeg rallied together in honor of an Indigenous mother whose body was discovered at a landfill earlier this week.
We are not disposable!
Indigenous leaders took to the streets calling on all levels of government to address violence against Indigenous women and girls. On Monday, 33-year-old Linda Beardy's remains were located by landfill workers, though police say there is no evidence to suggest her death was a homicide. Claims that federally employed dentists abused Indigenous children are piling up. They're accused of performing painful and often unnecessary procedures decades ago. A Calgary-based law firm says it could lead to a class action lawsuit. With more on that, here's CTV's Jill Makashon.
Her fear of dentists started young, when Melissa McKay was just an elementary school student, and she and her Indigenous classmates were pulled from school and taken to the basement of a nearby hospital for dental work.
That fear of getting hit all the time and the needles, and then they would do work without waiting for the freezing to set in. I think I'm one of the lucky ones. At least I didn't get teeth taken out that didn't need to be. I know some of my friends got healthy teeth pulled.
In the 60s and 70s, Saskatchewan's Indigenous students were often taken from their home First Nations to dentists hired by what was then known as Indian Affairs, today Indigenous Services Canada. The federal department is now facing a potential class action lawsuit. Organized by a group called the Band Members Advocacy Alliance Association of Canada, it is gathering information from impacted former Indigenous students who allege mistreatment.
The interest in this is substantial. Our call volume and email response has been enormous.
With the help of a Calgary-based law firm, interest from potential victims is growing beyond Saskatchewan, across Western Canada and the Northern Territories.
Some people don't think it's that bad, but when you think of little kids, like we were 6, 7 years old, and to be tortured, we didn't have our parents with us,
This lawsuit will take time, but Melissa McKay has already been waiting decades for some kind of acknowledgement of her pain. She sees this as the beginning of healing. Jill Makashon, CTV News, Winnipeg.
Still ahead, when the wedding guest list is a guessing game. How Reddit came to a Canadian couple's rescue. In Switzerland this long weekend, holiday traffic on a busy highway was ground to a halt. Motorists expressed their frustration after climate activists glued themselves to the road, demanding action to combat global warming. One angry driver grabbed the group's signs before police arrived. The motorway is a main route connecting Switzerland to Italy. Well, you could call it currency fit for a king. In the UK, they've started printing £10 banknotes featuring King Charles III. His portrait will, of course, appear on other denominations, but none of them will actually go into circulation until the middle of next year. The Bank of England says it needs time to build up enough supply. King Charles's coronation will take place in just under a month. While no match for a coronation, a celebration of love in Winnipeg today demonstrated some true Canadian kindness. When Derek Lowen proposed during a family vacation, his soon-to-be wife, Vanessa, decided to seal the deal right there in the city. And with no relatives or friends nearby, they turned to Reddit and invited anyone to attend.
So Derek, you may now kiss your bride.
Winnipeg answered the call, and the Saskatchewan native said, "I do," in front of strangers.
Even if you don't plan your wedding, things can still happen. But it's making the best of it no matter what goes on.
A unique ceremony celebrated with some newfound friends. Well, after the break, Rover's long-distance romance.
I know.
The virtual canine connection capturing hearts worldwide. We leave you tonight with a pair of adorable hounds whose long-distance love affair could teach some human couples a few things about romance. CTV's Amanda Anderson explains.
Hi, I'm Sadie. And I'm Rolo.
These dogs were brought together during the pandemic when their owners moved into the same house in Edmonton.
Kayla moved into one suite and I moved into the other, and that's how the dogs met.
Sadie wasn't a fan of other dogs until she met Rolo. Her owner, Kayla McTeer, says the connection was instant.
This relationship became really important to all four of us really fast.
For 2 years, the dogs were inseparable.
You know, they would like go outside and play in the yard, and then they'd come in and check in with us and get some water and go back outside and go downstairs and go upstairs. They were just kind of we just gave them free rein.
Then came a job opportunity for Caitlin Banks that took her and Rolo to Calgary, about 3 hours away. McTeer and Banks started video chatting once a week, surprised the dog's connection was still so strong, even virtually.
I know. It's pretty surprising for Sadie to howl like that because she doesn't really actually do that very often, and she really only does that for Rolo.
To like throw her head back and howl like that, it's not a common behavior for her.
Their friendship soon became known to the world thanks to a TikTok video that took off.
And we're just happy that people love our dogs as much as we do.
Absence really does make the heart grow fonder. The dogs reunite about once a month, picking up right where they left off.
And he doesn't have other dog friends in Calgary like Sadie. Like, it's kind of a one-of-a-kind situation. So it's been challenging, but I think that it makes our visits even more special when we do get to get the dogs together.
Amanda Anderson, CTV News, Edmonton.
Love those reunion shots. That's it for us on this Good Friday. I'm John Benavalli-Rao. For Omar and all the rest of us at CTV National News, thanks for watching. Sandy will be here tomorrow. Have a good night, and I'll see you on Sunday.